Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. It is Monday, March 20th, and that means it's time for our Hoops HD Report Sweet 16 Special Edition, if I got that all right.
Woo! You did.
We are past the first two rounds of the tournament with a few upsets, a few people that I'm surprised even made it onto the show tonight. But I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. My team didn't make the tournament. I feel best out of everybody here.
Well, my team got screwed out of the tournament, and then
Puppet
tonight was
University is,
screwed
is
out
not
of
even
the PC.
eligible. We got
They were
David
screwed
Griggs.
out of the CBI. I'm going to petition the NCAA replay the NCAA tournament with the correct teams.
We got David Dorman, an Arizona guy, and John Teitel, an Arizona guy over here, and Joby Fortson, a Virginia guy, and yet they're all still here, still breathing,
Sleek
thankfully.
is not allowed to stay here. He's not allowed. We need to bring
Yeah,
Matt in.
yeah. John Sleek, who's the only guy left whose team is alive here. So congrats to him, Xavier guy. But before we get to the games, actually, a couple pieces of news that just came out today. Some coaching news. I mean, there's a lot of coaching news going on, but I think the two big ones that we heard today was made it official that Rick Pitino is going to St. John's and Ed Cooley is on his way to Georgetown. And Titel, get a little upgrade there from Ewing to Cooley.
I mean, there's a chance he'll actually see Georgetown win like more than one Big East game a year. It's amazing. Yes,
Yeah,
no, I think it's a good hire. I don't know how much they paid him. I don't know how much Ewing's buyout is. A change needed to be made, which I think is obvious to everybody. Cooley's a proven winner, and I don't know if he can recruit DC or if he's going to go national. And if I think Ewing had like a 5-star coming in from Montverde next year, so hopefully that kid stays. But the future is looking bright.
Yeah, it is, I think. And I'll tell you, the Big East coaching, especially if Providence can make a big hit with their new hire, is amazing. The names that you have in this conference right now.
yeah.
Uh,
Rick Pitino. I guess he found St. John's on his GPS,
the
claiming he
other
didn't know where it was.
The other big news today it's kind of a little bit of sad news. It has to do with a very under the radar program out of the Northeast Conference. A conference we're going to be discussing in a few minutes here, by the way. But St. Francis Brooklyn announced today that's official that they are ceasing all athletics at the end of the spring athletic season here. They are the school actually recently pretty much sold its entire existing campus, moved into an almost a commuter type of building. I think they're upstairs over a Macy's department store, from what I understand. And it originally said they were going to try to keep athletics going by renting space in neighboring areas. They've said no, it's not going to happen. So not only are we losing Hartford, who is inexplicably dropping out of D1, but SFBK gone completely. Griggs, I know as Northeast Conference fans here, just a few days after the conference reached heights it had never reached before, we hear this.
Well, this is almost unbelievable. St. Francis Brooklyn has been Division One or NCAA since before the NCAA tournament even began. It is a small Franciscan university. I don't think it's ever had more than 2,500 students ever, and it's a small Franciscan college by design. Their enrollment is still within that range. I don't know how they've suddenly decided they're unable to afford athletics, and while they don't
Well,
play
they
football.
couldn't afford their campus anymore. They had to sell all their buildings. That
Yeah,
was the
doesn't it
problem.
cost like between 70 and 80,000 a year to go there? Like it's not a poor man's college.
I don't know. I don't know that there's going to be much left of the college in a few years here, from what I hear. And I think unlike Hartford, that decided to keep athletics going and use bad math to get there, these guys said we can't afford it. And I almost have a little bit more respect. They said they can't afford it. They really stepped up and proved they couldn't afford it because they just shut everything down. And that tells me, hey, we really, really, really could not afford these athletics. Um, but anyhow, that's one less team we'll have around next year, unfortunately. But I don't know. Why
And
don't we
one of
get to the
the
NCAA?
end of one of our favorite rival, and it really was not hyperbole. We loved the Battle of Brooklyn.
Let's get into the tournament itself, though. Let me go ahead and pull up the screen share here if I can hit the right buttons. If I can't, then we'll just get nonsense on the screen. But I think we've got the brackets, and let's start in the South region. Dorman, let me start with you. Uh, Up there, we'll go kind of through each little pod here. As first of all, we saw Alabama come out and really look good in their first two games.
Really looked good. They won convincingly against Maryland. Uh, on Saturday night, but I still question the offense, the shot selection, what they're doing on offense. Their defense is real solid. They got athletes galore. They're big down low. Miller is probably the best scorer in the country. He can do everything. Javon Quinterly really stepped up. He was awesome Saturday night. As Miller was great, he always is, but Quinterly really drove that team Saturday night. And now they got a battle with San Diego State. You can claim San Diego State was probably maybe the best, most impressive team over the weekend. They destroyed Furman, a very solid, strong Furman team. And now they got a great matchup here. Alabama versus San Diego State. San Diego State's going to try and muck it up, grind it out, physical, down low basketball. Alabama's going to try and get it up and down and see if they can score more points. But fantastic matchup here.
And Joby, you being a huge Mountain West supporter, that San Diego State team looked pretty good against Charleston and really good against Furman. And do you want to have some thoughts about the fact that Furman was even playing in that game? I'll give you a few moments.
I mean,
You being a Virginia guy.
And I can be honest, I don't know many teams. I mean, San Diego State doesn't hit shots like that ever.
Mhm.
I mean, let's be blunt. They don't hit shots like that ever. It was their best performance of the year by a extended margin. They need to have a similar night. If they have a similar night, because their defense is legit, hey, Alabama, you better be hitting shots too, or you are in trouble. And so if San Diego State had been hitting those same shots, it doesn't matter if it was Virginia, Furman, they're going to be moving on. Obviously, the Furman Virginia game, there was another game that cut my heart out a little bit more that now doesn't cut my heart out as much because of what happened this weekend, but on Friday night. But I mean, come on. Kihei Clark delivered the best pass in UVA history. And you know what? He might have also committed the worst.
Yeah, that was rough. It was one of the roughest turnovers I've ever seen, and then just nails the three. And Virginia season's over, and we got this fascinating Alabama San Diego State game. Griggs, go ahead.
Can I defend what appeared to be an utterly moronic thing? We've kind of said, why don't they just throw the ball up in the air? Like, let the time run down. Just throw it. Don't get fouled. Well, he did it. Now, he did it with about 4 or 5 seconds too many on the clock.
Griggs, 8 seconds with a timeout with a player open 10 feet from him.
And the timeout, the timeout thing is the big thing here. Why do you throw a bad pass when you've got a timeout? That's why you have timeouts.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is maybe from his vantage point, he miscalculated just how much time was left. Did he think it was 3 or 2 seconds?
No, he thought he could hit Shedrick, who was open.
I don't think he thought that.
But he hit it 20 feet short.
He
was a bad
decision.
No way around.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All timeout.
Yeah. The thing is called timeouts.
Or at worst, if you don't think you have timeouts, if you're double trapped right along the baseline, that's when you peg it against someone's shin. I mean, if you're falling out like he was,
or just let him foul you.
Let it foul you, or heck, if he just lets them get the turnover, at least you can set up a defense as opposed to giving them a wide open three. But
and then a guy who hits 26% from three nails a shot 8 feet beyond the 3-point line. It was open, but come on.
Stalika, the bottom half of the South region here, we saw Creighton take care of not only NC State, but then after Baylor beat Santa Barbara, Creighton very impressive, I thought, against Baylor.
If you had told me this about a week ago, this would not have been what I had expected. Granted, Baylor and Creighton both had relatively short runs in their respective conference tournaments, and Creighton had also gotten blown out by Xavier at MSG. Didn't seem to be a problem for the Blue Jays because Kalkbrenner and Baylor Shireman, they were both able to rest. They did have a bit of a scary injury, though, with Mason Miller, although outside of that, Creighton, their defense did show up against both NC State and Baylor, and wouldn't you know it, Greg McDermott suddenly in the Sweet 16 for the second time in 3 years.
Yeah, I will no longer say what I had said for about 12 years. It is no longer true. And of course, I'm talking about how the Bengals can never win playoff games.
Okay. Titel, I'll give you your first chance
Bring
here.
it.
You go ahead. You were talking about that this was your team getting a chance to beat your other team's arch rival, and you had a pretty rough day, didn't you? The Arizona Princeton game.
It kind of is like the worst loss of my life as a sporting fan, and I'm not trying to like oversell it, but like your college's arch rival against your graduate school, like it's you couldn't cheer more for one team and more against another team, and they're up 51-41 with about 10 minutes left, and it's looking good, and then they just it could be choked, it could be fell apart, it could be coaching. Believe me, like there's a bunch of Wildcat fans who have many theories on what happened, but the fact of the matter is Princeton made shots and Arizona didn't. And I think we could beat them like 9 out of 10 if we played 9 out of 10. But the whole point of the tournament is it's 1 out of 1. But then Princeton comes back against Missouri, which seemed impossible, and they beat them by 15. Like the thing is, this is not a Princeton team that was like a Charleston or an FAU, like a 30-win mid-major thing. They were like mediocre in the regular season. Their best non-conference win was Drexel, who's like barely in the top 200 in KenPom. They beat my Quakers 3 times, but we were in all 3 games. We almost beat them in the regular season finale, and we were leading towards the end of the Ivy semifinal. Like, I really can't explain it other than like they got something going on and they're riding the wave. And like, thank God they're not in the East region, because if they was in New York City, there's like thousands of Princeton alums who live in New York and are rich enough to afford a ticket. They would like fill the garden.
A thought on Princeton, and plus a kind of a follow-up to your assessment there, Titel. They play a style of defense. It's 1-3-1. It's more, I would call it a zone, but they probably call it a 1-3-1 matchup. And the Ivy is used to it. It's similar to what a lot of, it's not identical, but it's similar to a lot of the defenses they see. Missouri in particular is not built to handle that. Was it just something they had never seen before and didn't know what to do when they did see it? Speaking of Arizona, but more so Mizzou.
Yes, I think that's a fair assessment. But in terms of Arizona, like our front line of Tubelis and Balo, 6'11" and 7 foot. Guess which team had 6 shot blocks? Princeton. We only had 1 block. Like the physics don't add up.
Yeah.
Dorman, you're an Arizona alum also. Give you a few seconds for any thoughts on what happened.
Yeah, I think Taitai was just hitting at it. The guards weren't playing well, and the guards were definitely not shooting well. Get the ball. They have a great high-low game with Tubelis down there. And they didn't go down low. They didn't go inside when they were cold and the game was getting away from them. Get the ball down there to Tubelis, and just attack the rim. And that didn't seem to be the plan. They kept throwing up these threes with guys in their face. It wasn't going in. I get it. You miss shots and stuff, but you're giving away all your length and athleticism down low. Like, use your height, use your bodies that you have down low where you have a clear advantage. And they didn't want to take care of it. They missed shots and they lost.
Joby, let me be back here. Now we've got Alabama, San Diego State, Creighton, Princeton. Can Princeton keep this going against the Blue Jays? Or, I mean, 3 years in a row, we've had a 15 seed in the Sweet 16. I argue that 15s are the new 12s, but.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is, Yale wouldn't have been a 15. They would have been like a 13 or so. No, and this is why, and Griggs actually hinted at the reason why. Creighton saw what happened to Missouri. On not being able to handle the 1-3-1. Creighton's going to be ready. Creighton's going to know how to do it. Plus, they have very good ball. Creighton has pretty good ball movement on top of everything else, whereas I think Missouri's offense can get stagnant. And while Creighton's not huge per se, they definitely have the height to be able to handle Princeton. So I think you're going to be able to see Creighton take care of business pretty handily here. It was congrats to the Tigers for making the run to the Sweet 16. But I think Creighton will be having that date with most likely Alabama.
Do you see Alabama coming out of this region? I think it's become a slam dunk for them right now.
I've been saying this for a while, that Alabama is going to have a game where they just don't hit shots, and that's going to be a dangerous game. And it could be against San Diego State. They don't hit their shots. San Diego State does. It could be against Creighton. But what we actually saw when Alabama couldn't hit shots, Well, as it turned out, it was the first half of the Maryland game. And so that might have been their slow game. Remember, it was tied at half, or pretty much tied at half. So Alabama, I might have gotten over it, and you just got to assume they're going to be in the Final Four until they play someone who can handle them both defensively, like San Diego State, or offensively, like Creighton.
All right, let's go on down now. Let's scroll down here to the East region, which was, as if a 15 seed making the Sweet 16 wasn't enough. How about the second ever 16-1 after Fairleigh Dickinson had to get by Texas Southern. Now, let me just kind of set this up with a little bit here. This Fairleigh Dickinson team finished tied for second in the Northeast Conference, which was one of the objectively worst conferences we've ever seen, with everybody rated sub 300, including FDU in the net heading into the tournament. They did not even win the conference tournament. That went to Merrimack, who was not eligible, so FDU gets the automatic bid. Their head coach, just up from Division II, which a lot of D1 programs won't even hire a D2 coach. That might change in the future now. We saw what happened here. Brought 3 D2 players with him on a team that won, 5 or 6 games all of last season. Everything said this was going to be an awful year for Fairleigh Dickinson. Instead, they somehow get back into an auto bid, somehow beat a Texas Southern team that had 20 losses on the season, yet was favored over them and seated higher than them in the final rankings by the NCAA selection committee, 67 versus 68. And then they go on, they play Purdue. And quite frankly, I thought that I had somebody tell me that Princeton had a better head coach than Arizona. That's why Princeton won that game. And I chewed him out as being completely dead wrong. I think I think FDU completely outcoached Matt Painter in this game. Griggs Painter showed no ability to modify his game plan one drop when it was not working. And that's why they lost this game, I felt.
Yeah, it wasn't a 16-1. It is the worst team, maybe not even arguably, maybe just definitively and objectively, that has ever played in the NCAA tournament coming into the tournament. A sub 300 team. I don't recall anybody ever being that low. I remember one year Grambling was 301 going into the SWAC championship game, and we were speculating, would they get into the top 300 if they won? This is a team that finished behind transitional programs, 2 of them in the worst conference that we've ever seen. This is when Chaminade beat Virginia. I was not really alive yet, or too young to know. But Chaminade was at least a top 5. I mean, a very, very good D2 team. I don't think this Fairleigh Dickinson team, had they gone down the D2, would have been good enough consistently enough to even get inside the bubble for that tournament. This was stupid. It made no sense. It might be, in terms of the probability of the win, the biggest upset in American sports history. Am I wrong? Like, you watched the team all year, well, like I did. They weren't very good.
I agree with you. Go ahead, Norman.
Smallest team in D1 too.
Smallest team, and that's what the problem was here. Is Matt Painter came in with the same game plan that he uses to play Big Ten teams, and he played it against a small, quick team that didn't care, basically. And that's he played a slow down style, which was not what you needed against these guys. You have way more talent, even at your guards, even with their missing shots. A quicker game. Stop making the game plan be. Give it to Edey. If he can't get a shot off, kick it out for a 3. And that's all Purdue did for 40 minutes of that game. And I think they deserve to go home the way they played. But Sleek, let me bring you back in here, because Fairleigh Dickinson played a heck of a second game as well, but it was Florida Atlantic who's going to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, it took Florida Atlantic. They had about 10 or 11 lead changes in their opener against Memphis, and they ultimately hit a shot with under 5 seconds remaining. So at least they got to take advantage of FDU's good fortune. And in the second game, they managed to survive. And better enjoy Dusty May while you can, because if there weren't job offers lining up for him, there's going to be even more now that they're looking at a Sweet 16 and beyond.
And beyond. They can win that game. They're good.
Well, Titel Everyone loved this Duke team coming into the tournament, red hot ACC tournament championship versus a Tennessee team that struggled to get by Louisiana and was missing their point guard. How did Tennessee do it? Uh, I think you're on mute there.
Sorry about that. If I had to put it, I really thought this team was dead without Zakai Ziegler, but Olivier Nkamwa like came out of nowhere. At least to me, he had been good in the regular season, but a guy from Finland who most people don't know about, scoring 27 points, 10 of 13 from the field, 4 of 5 from the line, 0 turnovers. It's hard to find too many big men. He's 6'9", 236, who can play that well against a very good, as Joby's told us for a month now, and is correct, a good defensive Duke team. And like he's going against Lively and Filipowski, and like he's so efficient. He's scoring. He's making threes, and like he was unstoppable in only 22 minutes. Like he really took over that game despite only playing half the game.
Yeah, and so Doran, now we got FAU Tennessee. You think FAU keeps going here?
I do. I really do.
Really?
I think they can beat this Tennessee team. This is where I think the injury to Zakai Ziegler really is going to affect him, because Florida Atlantic is really strong on D, and they're long and they're athletic, and they're going to bother Tennessee getting in their half-court sets. Duke went ice cold from 3. If Florida Atlantic can hit their outside shots, I really believe. I like Florida Atlantic to beat Tennessee. I think the injury really shows up here for Tennessee. Florida Atlantic is, like we just discussed, big and talented down low. They got guys to board with Tennessee. They can't go in huge ruts offensively. I'm talking Florida Atlantic now, because Tennessee's D is going to be the best they've seen all year, Florida Atlantic. They really, really thrive on defense, Tennessee. Florida Atlantic stays away from there, gets good looks, they can definitely beat the Volunteers.
All right. Joby, on the bottom half over here, Kansas State, puts kind of an end to a lot pretty lousy, especially if you talk to Kentucky fans, season.
Yeah, and here's the thing: when I saw this break out, Kansas State, Kentucky, we'll go. I think on our own bracket at HoopsHD, Kentucky, that they're going to hit their ceiling. They did not hit their ceiling, and Keontae Johnson. This is such a great story, as it were. This wasn't by any stretch. While the final score was 6, no. This was Kansas State's game. It closed late. The Kansas State was the better team. There's no two ways about it. They showed why they've been a top 10 to top 15 team all year, not just recently. And so Kansas State, with Purdue falling out, with Tennessee advancing past Duke without Ziegler, and we'll talk about in a second, a 7-seed Michigan State. Whoa. Kansas State, don't get ahead of yourself, but you can start thinking Final Four possible.
Yeah,
well, being there yesterday.
What about the team they're playing?
Well, yeah, hold on a second. First of all, Titel, first-year coach for Kansas State, though, so it doesn't really matter, right?
It shouldn't, but it is. Like, I don't know that I would say that he outcoached John Calipari. Some of you might say, I don't know about that. I think it's more that Marquise Noel is arguably the best 5'8" player, not like this year, but I would argue in the 21st century. Like the kids, he does it all.
And Sleeka, you want to talk about the other half here, Michigan State, Marquette?
I was going to talk more about Noel being the ace in the hole and possibly being the best guard to be in this region right now. But going back to Michigan State, they were able to provide an answer for Marquette's swarming defense. They did not panic because of the deflections that Marquette would normally cause. And Tyler Kolek, who had been the Big East Player of the Year, he didn't have an answer until it was too late for Marquette to come back against Michigan State. But it's very difficult when you fall into an 11-0 hole early against the Spartans.
And Griggs, we should have known Tom Izzo was a 7 seed. We should have known this was going to happen.
Yeah, and I think they get by K-State.
Really?
Oh yeah, and then I think they get by Florida Atlantic, and 7th seeded Michigan State on their way to the Final Four, which is where they always land when they get a 7 seed.
Really? So you are taking Michigan State. Dorman, do you think Michigan State
I've
comes
been
out of this
kidding
region?
about it all year, and look at what I've done. It's going to happen.
I like Florida Atlantic to play Kansas State.
Yep.
Everyone's telling me how big of an upset this Kansas State game was. If you watched and talked about Kansas State like we have on this show all year, this was no fluke. This was a team that beat Kansas. This was a team that beat top tier teams in the Big 12 all year long. Kansas State is really good. Yes, Marcus Noel hit some shots that were phenomenal. And maybe, those don't go, but I like Kansas State's offense more than I like Michigan State's. I like Michigan State shoots the three really well. They don't shoot it a ton, but when they do shoot it, they shoot it well. They happen to be cold from that area yesterday against Marquette, but in a phenomenal, fantastic matchup, I'm going to go with K-State.
And into the Final Four with them too.
Better show up. I will say that Walker
Yeah.
did not have his best game against Marquette. That's why it's so surprising they advanced. When you say that, when you say all of a sudden Walker didn't play well and they advanced, that's saying something. So Michigan State might have something in the tank. We will see.
Well, Joby, last year's Final Four, two of them, Villanova and North Carolina didn't even make this tournament. Duke, we just mentioned, got knocked out. The fourth one was our national champion, Kansas. And after taking care of Howard, how about them falling to the Razorbacks?
Well, this says a lot about, of course, Coach Musselman, we really didn't need to see that. Just
Bus.
Leave your damn shirt on. Leave your damn shirt on.
I can take my shirt off.
But
no.
I will say Arkansas, wow, what a game. Smith and company are just this was not a case of Kansas playing poorly. I really believe that. Yeah, of course, if they play their perfect game, both teams play their perfect game, Kansas wins. But Arkansas took it to them. They showed why preseason Arkansas was top 10. People forget that. Arkansas was a flavor of the month sort of thing. And they played kind of poorly, to be honest. They had a February and early March that was forgettable, flat out. They fell from that 5-6 range all the way down to the 8 seed where they are. And some would even argue probably even closer to a 10. No, Arkansas showed that talent, showed all of what Musselman's assembled. They won very legit. They were the better team that day, without a doubt.
Titel, people are talking about Alabama and Houston. We'll get to Houston in a minute here. Both look really good, but I thought probably the most impressive team, arguably in the NCAA tournament so far, has been the UConn Huskies with what they did to Iona and then to St. Mary's.
Pair of double-digit wins over a pair of very experienced coaches in Rick Pitino and Randy Bennett. Coming in off of a loss to Marquette in the Big East tourney, so it seems to have gotten them regrouped. I'm still not sure that I trust anyone named Hurley in March, but Dan is getting it done, even though Bobby couldn't. The offense, he's got a very well-balanced squad. It's not like he needs Sanogo to score 24 a game. It certainly helps when he does, but when they're making 10 of 22 threes, they're near unbeatable because you bring Klingon off the bench to block some shots. It's a relatively experienced team. Caravan's a freshman. He missed most of his shots. He only had 3 points against St. Mary's, but I really think that and they were saying on TV, a lot of people think Arkansas UConn is going to be one of the best Sweet 16 games. I don't even know how it's going to come out just because of the Nick Smith factor. If he plays like the top 5 projected pick, I think Arkansas has a legit shot. If he doesn't play or doesn't score much, I think UConn can keep advancing.
I think that it's not going to be. I personally think that UConn's going to win this one by double digits as well, but we will see. Dorman, you being an Arizona guy, must have been loving what TCU did to Arizona State, first of all. but how about that? And then on top of that, very good game between the Zags and TCU with the Zags second half comeback.
Fantastic game. I thought Gonzaga, there were chances Gonzaga had to fold and go home. TCU was really ready. I thought they played well for about 35 minutes, but Timmy was just a dominating factor down low. I think Timmy might have had his best game of his season, maybe his career last night. The second half, he was just constantly scoring down low, and when he didn't have a shot, he made the right pass to the shooters out top to hit their threes. Gonzaga really played well. Few's got this team clicking on all cylinders. This UCLA matchup, to me, this is the Sweet 16 game of the year. I love this matchup. I know we saw it in the Final Four. Gonzaga needed a half-court heave at the buzzer to win it. But this game in Las Vegas, Gonzaga and UCLA, has every bit of the makings as a classic.
Has the makings, but I'm still not 100% sold on UCLA without Jaden Clark. So, I honestly thought that this Gonzaga team looks like a team on a mission, especially that second half against TCU,
Right.
and out to get to the Final Four,
Yes.
which I'm starting to circle already a UConn Gonzaga West Regional Final. I know we're not there, but Griggs, how
Yeah.
about UCLA getting by Northwestern, who picked up another tournament win this year?
Yeah, and congrats to them. I mean, I know that whenever it ends, you always think, "Oh man, had we just won one more game, this is disappointing. It would have been great to go to the Sweet 16." But there's only one team that ultimately doesn't feel that way once it's over, and they've had a great year. They exceeded every expectation of them that did not exist. So, but UCLA, despite the injury, talking about them, Clark is out. They've looked really good without him. My God, how good would they look with him? But as good as they've looked, I don't think they've looked as good as Gonzaga. And I'm kind of with you, Chad. I think that we're setting ourselves up for sort of an awesome clash of the Titans in the Elite Eight, which probably means it's going to be UCLA in Arkansas.
Well, Sleeka, what do you think? What comes out of this region? Who ends up in the Final Four?
Well, UConn has certainly played like a number one seed for the first time since about mid to late December right here. We saw Arkansas have trouble against another Big East team in Creighton back in November, and I could easily see the similar thing happening right here. But if we're also talking about a rematch for the ages, it was 17 years ago to the date that UCLA had a massive comeback against Gonzaga. But this time, I don't think UCLA is going to be able to overcome UConn, but I do think they have more than a puncher's chance to beat Gonzaga this time.
See, but you got UConn in your Final Four now.
Yes.
All right. Let's go for one last region up here. Joby, let me start with you here with Houston. Actually, might have struggled a little bit more. I think they did struggle more with Northern Kentucky than they did with Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, but you said the most impressive team is UConn. It's still Houston in my book.
Okay.
I am there. I am still on this Houston bandwagon. I picked them to win it, and I feel as good now. I mean, you don't realize that, my gosh, they walk in Birmingham, Auburn. Wow, was not an easy crowd to deal with, and they look good doing it. I mean, they extended themselves and they took it to them. Auburn kind of fought, played around a little bit. They kept it kind of close early, and Houston, they said they got. Sampson said he brought the team in, settled them down, and they thrive. There's a reason why this team is undefeated on the road in some really good road games. That game in the round of 32 counts as another road game in my book.
Oh, well, being in Birmingham, it was, and that was a very nice win. Dorman, they get Miami now. Miami, kind of surprising how well they played against Indiana, I thought, yesterday.
Yeah, I was surprised how well they played, because in the first half against Drake, they didn't look good at all. But I've said it all year, they're not big and deep down up front on the front line, but their guards are I'll take those guards with Wong over as maybe more than anyone in the country. And they were hitting their shots yesterday in the second half. In Indiana, who looked really good against Kent State, who everyone liked that upset, but Indiana pulled it out. Miami in the second half really just took it to Indiana, and they started hitting their shots, and Wong was dominating on offense and getting the ball in the right teammates' hands. And Indiana went down, and this was a team, Indiana, who I thought actually could make a move in the tournament. But Miami's looking strong, great guard play. But I'm with Joby. Houston's a different animal. There's a lot up front, and there's a lot of athletes up front on that front Houston Cougar front line, and I think Miami meets its match, and Houston beats Miami here.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a different.
There is more than one Trace Jackson on Houston.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it looked like Miami was going to be knocked out in the first round for a while against Drake, actually, in that game, and
Yeah.
before Miami turned it around. But Stalika, you are our Xavier guy, and you know, yeah, I gotta say, Kennesaw State played their asses off against you in the first round. I don't know how you survived that game.
It didn't look that way early with Xavier getting out to, I think it was about 20 points in the first 6 minutes. But to their credit, Kennesaw State did settle down. They got the lead to as much as 13. But one thing you can't do, though, they did give the Musketeers a bit of an opening when Xavier cut the lead 10, then Kennesaw stepped on the sideline and ended up turning it over. That sparked a big Xavier run, and Kennesaw State didn't even score for about 6 or 7 minutes. And there was one telling image where Adam Kunkel and Soleil Boom were having a bit of a heated disagreement on the court, but they quickly got on the same page, and whatever pressure was on him Friday was quickly dissipated on Sunday. If you want to talk about a tale of two different games, 17 assists on 19 field goals in the first half against the Panthers. They were never seriously challenged at that point.
Yeah, after Pittsburgh had surprising how well Pittsburgh had played against Iowa State. But Griggs, your thoughts?
We don't talk about that game.
Yeah. So, I was just going to say to Stalika, for a team that had been such an offensive power and who had been criticized for its defense or lack thereof, I'm talking about Xavier right now. I really thought it was their defense in this game that made the difference. During that stretch, you mentioned it wasn't that Kennesaw just went cold. It was Xavier was basically contesting everything that they were trying to throw up. They had a few open looks that didn't go in, but for the most part, I thought Xavier's defense was really good. I think what they were trying to do here, John, was force them to the free throw line.
Yeah, if you look at the last possession where Kennesaw State tried to drive the line, Nunji blocked it, said no, sir. And then once they got the rebound, it was academic.
Yeah, and that was a really bad joke that was lost on most people. This Kennesaw State team, good at a lot of things, shooting free throws, not one of them.
Tytel, Xavier's next opponent is going to be Texas, who, look really good against Colgate. Then, this Penn State team got so red hot at the end of the season and really had a shot against them.
They did, thanks to Texas making exactly one 3-point shot the entire game. Fortunately, they were able to hit the boards a little better. They only allowed 6 assists to Penn State, so a nice swarming defense. They only had 5 turnovers, good ball control. But the key was Dylan Dessou. What a great story. So the kid starts out at Vanderbilt and does very well on a very poor team. Ironically, the fortunes have changed in the positive for both Vanderbilt and Dessou as soon as he left. But he's from Pflugerville, Texas, which is approximately 18 miles from Austin. So he really just wanted to go back and be at the big local school, and it's working out very well for him. 28 points, 14 of 20 from the field, 10 boards against Penn State. And if you look at their schedule, like, it's starting to get more impressive. I mean, they did lose 8 games this season. It's not like they went undefeated, but they beat a Gonzaga team in November. They beat a Creighton team in December. They beat a Kansas State team in February. Like, they've proven themselves against a lot of teams that are still alive in this tournament, chat.
Yeah, but Xavier next, though. That is good. Griggs, what do you think about these 2 semifinals and who comes out of this region?
I've picked Miami to go as far as the Final Four, and then I picked them to lose as early as the round of 64. And if you average that out, I guess it's this round, and I think this is where they go out. I'm taking Houston to win that one. I think this other game is harder to call, but I just really like the way Texas is playing.
I think this is that best game in this round here, the Xavier Texas game. But go ahead.
I think Texas is a little better, but they're not so much better that Xavier's incapable of beating them. Xavier can absolutely beat them. But you can only pick one. I don't think you're going to let me get away with taking both. I'm going to take the Horns.
Do you think they beat Houston also?
No.
It's that
In
simple.
saying that, Chet, I think that we go into the Elite Eight with Houston and Texas. Texas is going to decide they have nothing to gain from this series or playing this game. They don't need to play Houston, and I think they're just going to call it a day.
Well, they're going to be stuck in the same conference together next year for a season, so
Yeah,
that's going to be a little rough.
Texas might disband its basketball program.
I'll tell you, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here and kind of try to get as much of the bracket on the screen here as we can. Don't quite have all of it on there, but what I want to do is run through each of you now and kind of give me, based on where we sit with this Sweet 16, who are your Final Four and your national champions now? May have changed because your champion picks may have gone out already. Personally, I'm going Alabama to beat Kansas State, UConn to beat Houston, then UConn win it all. I'm sticking with my UConn pick. But Dorman, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going a little upsets on two of them. I'm going to go Creighton. I'm going to go Creighton in the South. And I'm going to have them play. Yeah, and I'm going to go Florida Atlantic. I think they can beat Tennessee. I think they can definitely, if they can win that game, they can win again. So Florida Atlantic and Creighton. The other side, I'm going more chalky. I'm going to go Houston versus Gonzaga in the Final Four, and I'm going to go Gonzaga winning it all.
Gonzaga winning it all. Joby, how about you?
I'm on that Houston bandwagon. I mean, my gosh, what was it? 2 baskets by Auburn in the second half? 2?
Yes, 2.
I mean, the fact of the matter is defense travels and Houston could also play offense. Love this Houston team. I am with Dorman Zags, but I'll go with Houston in the matchup there. And then on the other side, Alabama, as I said, they're going to make it there in K-State. And I think we'll have what a lot of people predicted early in the tournament, just like we had that classic battle of Baylor Gonzaga. I think Houston, Alabama is going to deliver similar type results with Houston winning.
Houston winning it in Houston. Titel.
I think Alabama cakewalks into the Final Four. I think Tom Izzo proves that when you've been to 25 tournaments in a row, you know how to get to the Final Four. I had my doubts about Houston due to injury. Marcus Sasser just made 5 threes against Auburn, so I'm back on the bandwagon and believing in them to make it back to their hometown Final Four. And then I think the West region in Vegas, where I'm flying to tomorrow, should be fantastic. And I think it's wide open, but I don't think UCLA can do it with an injury, and I don't like betting against Mark Few in March. So I have the Zags, and I think that Houston beats the Zags because of the hometown situation. I think that even though Izzo's great in March, that Alabama just has a special player and team this year, and Brandon Miller and his cohorts. And although I was on Alabama, I think Houston at home is going to get it done over the Tide.
I thought for a minute there you were going to say Brandon Miller is co-defendants, but you said cohort. So.
Wow.
I think for Creighton to win the South region, San Diego State would have to weaken Alabama in a rock fight on the top. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm still going to take Alabama there. In the East, I think the guard play of K-State can probably neutralize Michigan State and either Florida Atlantic or Tennessee. So I would take the Wildcats to get to the Final Four right there. You look at the West, I've already gone on record as saying UConn probably going to be my choice out of there. And in the Midwest, I did say this about a week ago. Xavier is playing with house money. They've got their great escape out of the way. I do think the 9th time in the Sweet 16 is the charm, so I will take them to the Final Four here.
Oh.
And your champion?
My champion, I'm probably going to go with UConn right here. I don't think they're going to be able to knock off the Huskies a 3rd time.
A 4th time, wouldn't it be?
No, it would be a 3rd time.
3rd time. Okay, 3rd time. All right. Griggs, I think you're the only one who didn't ask it.
Okay, I've got Alabama coming out of the South. I don't want to say they'll blow through it, but I don't think they'll sweat too much. I actually am picking Michigan State to come out of the East. Houston, I think they get by Texas in the Elite Eight, and I really like UConn. I like Gonzaga too. I think that's a potentially great Elite Eight game to get to the Final Four, and I think it's going to be Houston over Alabama in the championship, but I also got to say, I don't know why you're asking me after how horribly I did picking the first two.
Which means that Princeton is winning the national championship, and John
Yeah.
Teitel may never be back on another basketball podcast again. Let's got a couple other notes here. There are a couple other tournaments going on still. The NIT, we're down to the final 8 there with North Texas, Oklahoma State, Wisconsin, Oregon, UAB, Vanderbilt, and Cincinnati. Despite being a higher seeded team, having to go on the road to Utah Valley. Utah Valley, congratulations, coming up Wednesday night's gonna get their first ever home nationally televised game on ESPN2. So,
Oh, that's
a little
exciting. Yeah.
shout out to them.
There was quote unquote maintenance going on at Fifth Third Arena after the Virginia Tech game, so that's why they also went on the road to Hofstra.
And Teitel, you're going to stick around in Vegas for the NIT Final Four?
So I don't fly back till Monday. I'm gonna see like if any good teams fly out and are willing to do a quick interview. I'd be happy to interview maybe Infali Dante of Oregon or Crowell of the Badgers. They got some good players out there.
Griggs, a little sad news for you here. We're down to the final
Wow.
4 in the CBI. Let me see if I can refresh this and get that last score up on the screen or not.
Charlotte won.
Okay, it's not coming on the screen, but
Charlotte.
we got Southern Utah, Eastern Kentucky at 1, and Radford just tonight knocked out Tim Miles and San Jose State. They'll take on Charlotte tomorrow night and Tuesday night semifinals. So we don't really care anymore, right?
No, I will just say Eastern Kentucky continuing to play well, probably the best, like, into a season they've had in a long time when you look at what they've doing since the second half of conference play started. And again, I watched this game and I counted 47 unfavorable missed calls or bad calls against San Jose State. This is a team that should have been in the NCAA tournament.
Let's go to final thoughts. Teitel, I'm going to start with you because I think you've got we got a picture here we want to pull up for you. Let's see if I get that on the screen. There you go.
So you might have thought that I was the only Penn class of '96 guy named John with this haircut, but apparently my good friend John Krikorian is a fellow classmate, and he's even better at basketball than I am. Thanks to his guy Trey Barber making the buzzer beater as they captured. He's the head coach at Christopher Newport University. They won their first ever D3 national championship on Saturday. I was not like super tight with John on campus, but definitely knew him, and we had some friends in common and stuff, and couldn't be happier to see a fellow Quaker succeeding at the highest level of D3. And as Tobin Anderson pointed out, as you correctly showed earlier, guys in D2 can coach at D1 and succeed. I don't know if John here has high expectations, but I have no doubt that he can succeed if he goes up 1 or even 2 levels.
Yeah, but beating the powerhouse Mountain Union, who seems to win every championship every year in every sport, I think. So congrats to Christopher Newport there. Continue our final thoughts here, Salika.
Well, we talked about St. John's hiring Rick Pitino earlier, but there's also going to be a potential Kevin Ollie 2.0 situation looming with them. Let's not forget they fired Mike Anderson, who was previously coaching the Johnnies, but we also learned that apparently he was fired, quote unquote, with cause, meaning they would not have to pay the, I guess, 10 to 11 million.
$11 million.
He was owed. So needless to say, Anderson now suing the school for that 11 million. So
Anderson's going to win that lawsuit too, in my opinion.
He is going to win the lawsuit.
I don't know if the for cause you're allowed to be having a lousy team counts as a for cause or not, but I guess that is a cause, right?
It depends on the terms. Well, you know that you're the attorney, but also having a chance to hire Rick Pitino, also not a cause.
Joby.
Yeah, I mean, for cause on hiring Pitino. My God. So mine is very short and sweet. The Mountain West, for the most part, did exactly what I wanted them to do, which was continue their long-standing tradition since 2018 and not win a game in the tournament. But San Diego State, they snuck past Charleston and put even worse, they beat Furman. So, in the words of Ron Burgundy, go F yourself, San Diego.
Hey, at least all the other Mountain West teams did exactly what we expected. And by the way, the Big Ten also another very disappointing tournament out of Michigan State. Dorman.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the Big East. I thought they had a really, really strong weekend. Xavier, UConn, and Creighton all to the Sweet 16. They also did great in the coaching. Ed Cooley, like we discussed, stays in the Big East, goes to Georgetown. Rick Pitino's back in the Big East at St. John's. Providence will make the right hire. I know there's some big names in the mix. kind of like Kim English there, maybe for the job from George Mason, but a wonderful week for the Big East.
Yes, it was. Actually, the SEC has its other conference with 3 teams left.
Three.
Am I correct?
Yes.
And what I heard actually
Absolutely.
was there are 11 total conferences represented in the Sweet 16, which ties the record for the most ever in the Sweet 16. Griggs, you want to finish the show off?
Yes, it's sort of something that we probably don't like to talk about a lot. It is transfer portal season. There's the transfer window now. It's open for the next, I guess, 50 or so days. I would like to caution everybody into pointing out that last year, the vast majority, I don't have the exact percentage at my fingertips, but I can tell you it is well over half of the players that entered the portal, and there were hundreds, maybe even thousands, did not end up with any D1 or D2 offers. We used to say in the pre-one and done days, it was bad for the sport, not just that the stars were going to the NBA, but 40 to 50 players were declaring to go to the draft and forfeiting their chances to play in college when they really would have had a great opportunity and could have been good college players. And the one thing the one and done did was prevent that. Well, this is far more than 40 or 50. This is 500 players that are making a choice that's resulting them going from having a place to play to not having a place to play. I'm all for transfer rules being relaxed and players being able to leave and go seek out other opportunities. But I do think that it is a problem with the sport when that many people end up with nothing.
Yeah, well, I unfortunately think it's the day and time we live in here. And it may be the reason why some of these decent players are falling in transfers down to these lower level schools. Net result: 15 seeds in the Sweet 16 for 3 straight years.
I think you're right. I think that has something to do with it. I think everybody kind of has it in their head that they're probably better than they are. This is for another podcast. This was a bad final thought, but I don't
Okay,
think it's good for the game or for the player. Thank you.
Definitely a good topic for an off-season podcast, though. But on that note, we are out of time. So on behalf of David Dorman, David Griggs, John Salika, John Teitel, and Joby Fortson, I'm Chad Sherwood. We'll be back again next week with our Final Four edition. Talk to you real soon.